All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Brandy Leroy. I teach social studies at Bangor High School in Bangor, Maine. I'm also an adjunct professor of GIS at University of Maine Machias, where I get to work with both college and high school kids in our early college classes. So I get to do a lot of project-based learning with them, but this is from my GIS class. I'm really lucky. I got a GIS elective this year, and I have 12 kids in the class, and we've been doing some really interesting work. And one thing I've found out is that, when working and teaching with GIS, it's kind of a mess. We're kind of all over the place, and we have a bunch of different projects that we've been working on, and then some of them get put to this back burner and we get working on something else, and the kids will end up coming back to it, or sometimes they don't because they're not so interested in it. But this is something that I have a couple kids who have really kind of been going on it, and it's still a work in progress. They notice that there's been a real uptick in the homeless population in the city of Bangor. We're a fairly small city, but it seems like almost every corner by stores, they were seeing homeless populations, whether they were panhandling, sleeping, just hanging out, walking down the street with shopping carts. So they were a little concerned about that, and wanted to know what was going on. It also brought some really great discussions to our class, like, what happens to these people in the winter? We live in Maine. It gets cold here. And they got looking into it and found that there's an organization that actually had been approved for some grants to get some warming stations, but they couldn't decide where to put them. So these students decided that they were going to create a survey 123 and see what they could find about data on where these homeless people were, to see if they could present to the city on the best place to put a warming station for the winter. So they started creating a survey 123. We really talked about what they should include in it. They didn't want to include pictures. This wasn't about, the people themselves. It was about where they are, and how we could help them. So what were they doing? Were they panhandling, sleeping? Were they loitering? Were they just hanging out with others, walking down the street? They wanted to know if they were adequately clothed for the weather. We've actually been really lucky here in Maine. It honestly just got cold this week, and for Maine in November, it's still not really that cold. So most of the answers were yes. Is the person adequately clothed? But we've seen some changes in the past week. We put a map on where are they located, and when did you see them? So that they could start to gather that data on when they were seeing people. They found that they found people sleeping more in the mornings on benches versus the afternoon. The afternoon, they found people panhandling more. And they are actually in a process right now because they found some interesting data, and they're still collecting data. But they found some interesting data, so they want to make a time-lapse map. And they're working on that right now to see where these people are on certain days, because certain things have happened around the community, and it's kind of changed the dynamics. So far, we have a heat map, and you can see there are some areas out here on the outskirts. But a lot of them are concentrated right down here. And there's actually a homeless shelter right here, and the police station's right across the road. So far, they're thinking that, it might be a good proposal to put a warming shelter somewhere in that area, but they're still collecting the data. Some things that they've noticed, weather really impacts. There are some days that they didn't see anybody out because it was pouring. Nobody was panhandling because of the weather. They cleaned out the homeless encampment a few weeks ago, and that ended up with an uptake of people sleeping. on benches in parks. So they've noticed those types of things. So they think if they make a time-lapse map, they can actually really start analyzing and digging into some of that data even more. And they really hope to present, they want to do it in December. I think that's a little bit too close. I'm thinking January, but they want to present it to the city council to see if they can get some warming stations put in for these homeless people who need to get warm in the middle of January and February. So that's what we're working on right now. I'm going to turn it over to Heidi.